Part 3, here we go. Welcome back to Horticulture Geek. I'm Ray. Thanks so much for joining me on this video today. This is part 3 of Welcome to the Jungle. In part 1, I walked you through and showed you everything, how overgrown and crazy things had gotten in just a matter of weeks here in the garden. And in part 2, I started the cleanup process. And so I've still got, from about right here-ish, all the way around to go. I did, and it just rained. You might be able to tell the ground looks wet. So it did help cool it off a little bit. So it's a good time to work on this. I was able to work down in one of my raised vegetable beds down there yesterday, and I got that on film, so I will plug that in as well. But for right now, I'm just gonna set the camera up and I'm gonna get busy because I got a lot to do. So sit back and hope you enjoy. Come with me, I want you to see something. So this is my echinacea, and you can see that I've got a bunch of dead blooms on here, so it needs to be dead-headed is what it's called. And what that simply means is that I need to prune the dead flower bulbs off, because every one of these bulbs is forcing this plant to focus all of its energy into seed production on these flower heads, instead of focusing its production on building a healthy plant and building fresh flowers. So mid-season, about July, is a perfect time to really work through all of your perennials and get them all cleaned up, dead-headed, cut back if there's any wonky, overgrown, weird growth, anything like that, you can bring them down. And there's some over here, different kind, that I'm actually gonna just whack back, and I'll show you that when I get there. But all you do to deadhead, like this echinacea, is I'm gonna find a dead bloom. Let me turn this camera around. Okay, so I'm gonna find a dead bloom, and I'm gonna come back to where I find the first set of good leaves. So like this one's by itself, but then I've got these two here. So I'm gonna come in right here and I didn't show that very well. So look right here, dead bloom. I'm gonna trace it back to a set of good leaves, come in right there. And so you see I've left, so there's some good leaves there, and I pulled it back right there. All right, I'm gonna set you back on the table, and I'm gonna get back at it. Okay, I wanted to bring you over here and show you this as well. This is an African daisy, and unlike the echinacea I pointed out a minute ago, this plant technically does not need to be deadheaded, because this plant does what's called burying the dead. And what that means is anytime a flower dries up, it completely shrinks back down and will kind of fall away on its own, and the foliage that's growing out will cover it up and new flowers will emerge. So you technically do not have to deadhead this type of plant, but it does take a few days for that burying of the dead to happen. And since I'm here anyway pulling weeds and cleaning up, I'm just gonna go ahead and groom it. And I don't even need pruners for this. You literally just reach in and you just pluck off the spent flower heads. And as I'm moving foliage around, I'm seeing some down and deep in there where it had buried them. But that is something I wanted to point out for this type of plant. And plus, how pretty is that? One of my favorites. All right, I'm gonna set the camera back up and keep at it. So you've kind of watched me work my way around, pulling up weeds and stuff that didn't belong. I've opened up airspace over here to get some airflow around those plants. That'll make them a little healthier. And right here, I just got through pulling weeds and stuff out from around these flowers. And this little section of vegetable bed has to get cleaned up. The zinnias are gonna stay, obviously. This is just in a pot. This pot's gonna find a new home. But I'm standing here looking, and I've got 2 ditch lilies right here. Those orange day lilies. We call them ditch lilies here because they grow in the ditches everywhere wild. And these 2 things are covered in grass and weeds, and I've pruned these things cleaned them up multiple times already this year. And I'm just kind of done with them. So I think I'm fixing to just dig all this out completely. And I think what I'm gonna do is start planting zinnias permanently in this spot in the summer. I think that'd be really pretty. I think the zinnias will look really good next to the butterfly bush and the lamb's ear and the rosemary. And there's a big rock in there. So there's a decorative rock in there. So I think that's what I'm gonna work on next. And then I've obviously got to finish weeding this bed. But I'm only gonna be able to weed, like right here, there's not too many weeds around the zinnias, and there's not too many weeds under the okra because they're just fighting. Nothing's surviving under them. And I've got some more okra to harvest already. So I've got to work on that. So I think what I'm gonna do is plug in the footage of where I cleaned up the big raised vegetable bed down there right here. And then we'll kind of wrap it up. All right, so I got the vegetable bed down here cleaned up. So we got that tomato vine pruned up, staked up. This one cleaned up and staked up. And then I just did a general weeding on the bed. There's another one right there I see. I gotta go get it. Pruned up some dead and dying leaves and just cleaned everything up. Improved the airflow greatly. It looks a lot better down here. Well guys, I hope you've enjoyed part 3 of Welcome to the Jungle, the cleanup. That kind of wraps up this portion of the video. It's getting late. Again, it's always getting late, but that's kind of the struggle of being a gardener with a full-time job. And so I think many people can relate to that. There are some days I'm able to make it out here early in the morning before I go to work. I typically don't film anything at that time of day just because that's kind of my time. Where I'm out here, I'm in my personal space. It's usually the time I reflect and chat with Jesus a little bit, and just enjoy the garden. And then in the evenings after work, I get out here and do what I can, you know, with the heat and the bugs and whatever else we've got going on. So I hope you've enjoyed what I've showed you today, just working through the garden. You know, we all have projects in the garden. We all have projects around the home. Then there's nothing to do but to jump in and get her done and get after it. So I think my next video will be a full garden tour. I'm not gonna do that here because this video is already too long. I've got a few more tidying up things to do around the garden. And I think Kelly, Mrs. Horticulture Geek, is wanting to rearrange the patio. So we may get out here and bust that out, get that done, and then do a full garden tour, kind of what does it look like right after it's been cleaned up. So stay tuned for that video. But for now, guys, if you haven't subscribed to us here at Horticulture Geek, I would certainly love it if you would do that. Follow along on our journey. You never know what we're going to get up to or where we're going to go. And if there's something you want to see us do, you want me to talk about or explain, put it in the comments below or shoot me a message. Always looking for content, always love advice. Guys, hit that thumbs up. I hope you've enjoyed it. And until next time, from my garden to yours, I wish you all the best and happy gardening.